Hello everyone. So in this video, let's see how we can create a project tracker in Notion that automatically has progress bars that automatically updates the progress bar based on the task completions. So first, let's create a database for that, and let's call that projects database. And inside this projects database, and we can create another database called task database. So based on this task database completion, we will be updating the projects database. So let's call that tasks. So the first thing that we'll be doing is let's add relation property. Let's connect the projects database to the task database. So we can use the relation property for that. So search for relation and you can choose relation property and you can select the task database that is here. And you can add a two-way relation. So let's call this tasks on the project database. And in the task database, we want to show projects on the project and we can add the relation. So now as you can see, the properties are added in both databases. We have the tasks in projects and project relation in tasks. So now what we want is we want a status property for the task, and when the project's task is completed, we want it to automatically update the progress bar in the project database. So in the task, let's create a status property for that. Let's search for status property and we have status property here, so you can click that and let's call that status. And by default, we have three options here, which is start, not started, in progress, and done. And let's leave that to be default. So we have the status property here. You can customize this as how it is in your task database. For now, let's keep it simple. So let's take the status property and keep the default options. Now we want to add a property in a project database. We can call that progress bar. So it's going to be a formula property. So let's add the formula here. So it's formula property. And inside the form, let's call the formula property as progress bar. Progress bar. So first, before we start building the formula here, let's add some sample data. Let's add some projects and some tasks for the projects. So let's call this project 1 and 2 and project 3. So once you add these projects, now what you have to do is let's add some tasks for each of these projects. So instead of adding the tasks here manually for each of the project and relating that using the relation property, we can create a button for that. So let's search for button property, and you can call the button property as add task. And this button should add the task to the task database for the project. So let's configure that. Let's click on add task button and edit automation. So inside that, the first action we want to do is we want to add a page to the task database. Let's click on the tasks database here, and now we are adding a page to the task database. Name can be, we can select that later on. And the key important thing is we want to select the project relation database to be this page. And after we have done that, we want to open the page added. We want to open the task so that we can enter the name and other details. So let's click on open page added to task. So now this will add the task and open the page for us. So let's add a task for project 1. So let's click on add task. As you can see, it is automatically selecting project 1 and you can just enter the name for the task. So let's call that task 1. And we can just we can just add many tasks for the project. So we can just check how we can just build the progress bar here. So let's add some more tasks and let's add three tasks for project 1 and some more tasks for project 2 and 3. So I'm not entering the name for now, we can add that later on here. Okay, now we have like three tasks for project 1, 2 for project 2 and 1 for project 3. So now let's add the name for that. So let's just copy paste and we'll just edit the numbers. So project 1 all can be task 2. So it's 2 for project 1 and yeah, that is. So I actually added two tasks for project 3 also. So let's add, call it task 2. So now we have these are the tasks for each of the projects. Now what we want is based on the status property here. So for each of the tasks here, we are having status properties. So some of them might be completed and some of them might be in progress. It might be something like that. Now we want to reflect this status property here by showing the value in the progress bar. So for example, let's group this by project so you can see the task by projects. So you can click on group here and you can go group by project. And now as you can see, it is grouped by the project here. So now what we want is we want to check the status property. So show the number of tasks that is completed under the project. So here there is this not shared property. So if for example this task is done, then we want to show it as 33% completed because out of the total tasks we have so many tasks and we want to know the progress of how much task has been completed under the project. So let's create the progress bar formula for that. So some might be in progress, for example, this is in progress and some of them are done. So we want to know the progress for that. So let's create the progress bar formula. So this is going to be a number formula. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to take all of the tasks and first let's create a let's function for that. We want to declare variables so that we can reuse them and we can understand what the value is. So the first one, let's call this total tasks. It's going to give us the total number of tasks and let's call that tasks relation property and you can use the length function here. So you can call the length function like this here or you can just call using the dot notation. You can use like this. So task dot length gives you the total tasks and the next thing that we want to know is we want to know how much tasks of them are completed. So let's call that completed tasks, another variable name. So what the value is here, we want to filter the tasks by the status is completed. So let's take the tasks relation property and for each of the tasks we are asking or we are filtering by one thing. So we are asking the task. So let's use a filter function for that first. So we are asking the task whether your status is done. So if you are done, we only count, we only take you in. So we are saying the task like the current gives us the current task. We are asking the task about its status properties. We are getting its status property here. And we are asking if the status property is equal to done. So only if the status property is equal to done, we are going to take you in and we're going to count you on the list. So we are saying something like that. And let's take the status property and we're going to check if it is equal to done. So here one more thing is status property has both uppercase and lowercase letters. It is better to convert all of them into lowercase letters before comparing the string. So let's call the lower function for that, which returns the string in lowercase, and we can compare that with done. So if the status of the task is done, we will be counting the task. Now we have the list of tasks whose status is completed, and next we want to know the length of this list. So let's call the length function. Now this gives us the completed tasks. The next one, which is the last value that is given in the let's function, will be the output for the function. So now we want to show the ratio between the completed task and the total task. This is going to give us the required ratio, that is the completion progress. So let's do that. So let's call completed. Let's use the variable we have created. So completed tasks divided by the total tasks. So which is giving us 0.333, but let's use the round function for that. So it's much more clean for us, much more better readable. So let's use a round function. So inside round, let's put this value here. But as you can see, it is showing 0 because round rounds the value to the nearest 0. So first, let's multiply this value by 100 and then divide that by 100. So you get exact round numbers. So we can multiply that by 100 and we can divide that by 100. So now as you can see, it is exactly rounded to two decimals and that is the required ratio. So now you can see that this is the progress bar, but these are just numbers and we want to show them visually. So we want to show them using progress bar. So let's click on the property. We can go to edit property here and we can select the number format. So the first number format we can select percent, and as of now we will not be seeing any progress bar here, but you can see the numbers are converted into percentage. After that we can click on edit property and we can edit this show as property here. We can show as progress bar and you can select the color you want and you can just select if you want to show the number. So after you have done, you can see that the task is progress bar is showing here and it automatically updates with the task that is completed. So if you complete another task in the project, so for example you are completing task 2, it will automatically update in the progress bar here. So let's click on done, and as you can see, it is updating in the progress bar. So this is how you can create automatic progress bar for the in Notion for the projects database. So that is about today's video. That is about this video. So hopefully you found this video helpful and you learned something in this video. So thank you for watching. See you in the next video.